Serious, Redditors, who are the final people to see a missing person? Have they been found? And how has their disappearance affected you? When I was in my early 20s, I was friends with a group of brothers, one of whom was one of my girlfriend's roommates. On New Year's Eve they threw a party at their apartment. The next morning I was taking the train home and happened to end up on the train with the youngest brother. He was acting normal, but I remember saying to him "see you later" when getting off the train, and him smirking and saying yes. A few days later, one of the brothers says they haven't heard from him since the party. I told him about the train interaction, and it turned out I was the last person to have seen him. No one else had seen him since the party, including his roommates. They eventually found a note in his apartment that reads something like "I am fine, but don't try to find me." Several weeks go by with no word from the younger brother. I'm cooking dinner with my girlfriend and there's a knock on the door. Guess who shows up but the missing brother. He had run away to the Dominican Republic without telling anyone to see what life was like there, ran out of money, and returned. Last person to see him before he disappeared. First person to see him when he returned. That could have been worse. Q. Yes, he was found. Back in high school, a guy I knew disappeared and the cops interviewed my friends and I. Apparently a note was found on his bed that read "give $1,000 or you'll never see your son again," and that's all it said. No contacts or drop off location or anything. They found the guy 3 days later walking around the mall. He had been hiding behind an Albertson dumpster the entire time and got bored when he decided to walk around a nearby mall. Idiot. Yes, he faked the note. He even did it in the style of cutting out letters from a newspaper and gluing them to form the sentence. When I was 13, I went to visit my auntie on a whim. She lived down the hill and we were extremely close. I was late for dinner and I knew my mum would be mad, but when I walked past my auntie's, something was screaming at me to go inside. My auntie kept saying she was so happy to see me and was dressed up like she was going on a date or something, which I found strange because she was only hanging round at home. We chatted for a bit and was saying some very odd things. "Tell such and such this, tell so and so I love them." She told me to take whatever I wanted from her house, and her pantry and fridge were completely emptied out, which I thought was weird. The whole thing made my hair stand up, but I was just a kid and didn't understand what was going on. When I eventually left to go home, she teared up, gave me a big hug, said she loved me and was so glad I came by. The next day no one in the family could reach her. The curtains were all pulled at her house and the phone line was cut. After eventually breaking in, my grandma discovered she had hung herself in the closet. Everyone in the family wondered why she didn't leave a note. After 3 years of repressing that memory, it resurfaced and I realized that I was the note. Fricked me up for a long time. I was the note. Frick me, man, that's rough. Last year I worked at a school for kids with bodily and mental disabilities. I was an intern for 9 months, and there was a kid I always talked to in the hallway. He was 15 years old at the time and he was a pretty chill guy. He was in a wheelchair only because of a cross-section paralysis, so his brain was completely fine, yet it bothered him a lot. 2 weeks ago he was found missing. Even though I didn't have to do with him anymore, I still was worried about him and his well-being. Last week he was then found dead in a river strapped to his wheelchair. It actually kinda destroyed me, since in school he was a super positive guy, always cracking jokes, and then he was found dead. Turns out it was suicide. That is absolutely heartbreaking. I'm so sorry. Way back in the early 90s, I was traveling. Spent a year traveling around the world, and at the time I was working in a youth hostel in Greece, on Santorini. I had talked about traveling together with a friend from home, but we ended up doing our own trips. Well, 6 months into the trip I meet up with him in Santorini. We hang out for like a week, and he's continuing on eastward, and I was going west. Like 2 days later his flight crashed in the Himalayas near Nepal. All 200 plus people on board died. I wasn't the last person to see him, but was the last person from our home who did. After it happened, I wrote a long letter to his parents and family telling them about our week together on Santorini, and sent some pictures of us. These would be the last pictures his family had of him. The parents were too hurt to acknowledge my letter. I understand, but his sister wrote me and thanked me. That was 28 years ago. That's tragic, but I'm sure his family treasured the photos and shared memories. If I assume correctly, this is the same crash that killed the poet Dominic Sass. I have a slightly different story. I had a friend in college. We got into an argument one night. I said some things about how she had been acting, culminating in that night. I was done. A few months later, I decided to reach out. She had moved out of her apartment and disconnected her phone. Back then we just had landlines. I heard from a mutual friend she had moved back in with her dad. I called her and apologized. I asked her to have a beer with me to catch up. She told me she had stopped drinking, so we met for coffee instead. The argument had really affected her. She decided to do better. She quit drinking, moved home and re-enrolled. I told her I was proud of her and asked if everything was cool at home. Her dad had a history of abuse. She told me it was good and we promised to keep in touch. I woke up to the police knocking on my apartment door. They found her body a few blocks from her dad's house. I was the second to last person to see her alive. They questioned me. Her car was in her father's driveway. That son of a b beat her to death and dumped her body like trash. The police were unable to arrest him right away and he died in the parking lot of a local bar a week later. They said he had a heart attack. He escaped justice and her murder is technically unsolved. I'm so sorry that happened but glad that you made up before she died. I hope the father is roasting somewhere nice and toasty. Back in junior year of high school for me, I knew a guy who was in his senior year and I knew him because we worked together at a school job we did. While working we were talking and he was telling me about how he's gonna go hang out with his friends after work etc. Didn't think much of it. Next day it's reported that he was killed in a drive-by shooting. This was 2 weeks before he graduated high school. I was the last person who had talked to him before he got into his car to drive to wherever he went. Not only myself, my school and especially his close friends became devastated and following was the proper things such as a funeral and such. During graduation ceremony his name was announced and everyone was asked for a moment of silence as his father walked down the aisle in his position. Truly saddening. It's been 2 years almost now and his Instagram and other social media are still up. I occasionally pull it up from time to time to look at it. Miss you bud. I'm glad the social media is still up. I lost my best friend in 2016 and his family had his Facebook page deleted. I have all kinds of old memories come up and his comments are just gone. It's just half conversations every day. My childhood best friend is currently missing since the 30th of August. I live in a different state now, but my last text to him was about classic WoW and playing it together. I still don't know how it's affecting me, but I miss him so much. He went missing on a hike, so my only message to people is please try not to hike solo. If you are, please let multiple people know of your plans. A very close family friend that was dealing with the loss of his oldest son, who had committed suicide a few weeks earlier. It was hard on all of us, as they both worked with us on our farm, and I had known the son and the father since I was 3-4 years old. He came over for dinner on a Sunday night. He was supposed to come back over Monday morning to help out with farm work. It would be his first day back working since the loss of his son. 4 days go by and he never showed up. We figured it was because he was dealing with his personal drama and didn't read much into it. Although we did reach out several times and went by his house on the second day since we'd seen him. That Friday we were informed by his ex-wife, who was contacted by authorities, that he had killed himself in his truck several miles outside of town in the middle of a field. He had left our home Sunday night and ended his life just an hour or so later. I sometimes feel like our family did not do enough to console him, and that maybe we didn't realize just how much he was struggling in life. It weighs on me occasionally, especially around the time where both of the tragedies occurred. It was a great loss to me and I have never properly dealt with the emotions. There was the daughter of my mom's friend. She has a mental disorder. I don't know much about her other than that she's 20 plus, but because of her disorder she's like a kid. So she was missing the day after her and her mom visited us. After 3 days of search messages and police looking for her, news came. She was in Turkey and got married. We live in the Netherlands, so yeah, quite impressive to pull that one off. Turkish and Dutch police are investigating if she was tricked or did this willingly, cause there's a lot of unclear things. One of my best friends found out his wife was cheating on him. He went ballistic, grabbed his gun and took off to parts unknown. Both the police and I went looking for him for several hours but couldn't find him. Eventually, He texted me saying he loved me and where we could find his body, which we did. I was the last person he ever spoke to in life. Next year will be the 10th anniversary of his death, and while admittedly I don't think about him every single day, I do think about him and that horrible day a few times each month. Worse, I live in a rural area where lots of people have the same build and wear much of the same clothing he did, so I will occasionally see close doppelgangers of him walking around and it never fails to flood me with emotion. My friend also ruined Across the Universe by the Beatles. He and I were big fans of the group and that was his favorite song of theirs, so it got played a lot at his viewing. Now, I can't listen to it. The last time I happened to be watching a movie that featured the song, I started crying without even realizing I'd started. I am incredibly sorry for your loss. Every time I hear 99 red balloons I am transported to the spot I was standing when I learned a dear friend had taken his own life. The holes they leave behind are vast and often taken lifetimes to heal. I am not 100% sure if I am the last person to see this person, but I feel like I am, and didn't know it until after this person was found days later. She had committed suicide. So, about 3 years ago a girl around the same age as me went missing. I live in a tiny community, less than 1,000 people, in a reserve in northern Ontario, so everyone knows everyone. Everyone's first thought is that she ran away or is hiding in someone's house. Another day goes by, and our community starts a search team. And by day 3, they finally find her body hanging not too deep in the woods off a nearby road. They determine she killed herself 3 nights prior. Died the 3rd of June, found the 6th of June. Now, on the night of the 3rd of June, I was feeling sad and decided to go for a ride around our little community. And as I'm driving around the area she was later found in, I see what I think is an iPhone flashlight in the woods. I didn't think much of it at the time. I have come to conclusion that she was on her way to kill herself and was using her iPhone flashlight cause it was nighttime, obviously. It scares me thinking I might have been the last to see her, and it sucks I didn't know it was her. I haven't told anyone about it. I was one of the last people to see a kid who lived across the street before she was kidnapped. Our neighbors across the street were raising their grandchild because their kid's parent, was on drugs. The kid was about 6-8 years younger than me and I used to babysit her sometimes, and she would come over and play with me and my siblings. When I was around 14 and she was around 8, several men broke into the house and kidnapped her. I had babysat her the night before, and I can't remember if she was home alone or if one of the grandparents was there. The police found her about 10-12 days later. Her mother owed a lot of money for drugs and so some of the drug dealers tracked down her kid and kidnapped her to try to get the mother to pay them. I never learned the details of what happened while she was kidnapped, and she has gotten therapy and is now married with kids. She's doing very well and has a happy life. Sorry everyone, I didn't phrase things well. I worked in a very small public library years ago. There was a young man, maybe 8 to 10 years older than me, that came in every few days for several months. He was very intelligent and extremely interesting. We talked often. One day he came in, we talked for a while and he asked me to make sure he had returned everything he had checked out. I did. And before he left he thanked me for always helping him and being nice, etc. He walked up the street to his apartment and shot himself. I always wished that I had realized he was saying goodbye. A friend in college had left a party we were at because he had remembered he left his jacket in another person's dorm. Nobody heard from him the following day. Most figured he was drunk and just passed out somewhere. I even left a voicemail on his phone like, "Where are you? LOL, hope you aren't dead." Days turned into weeks. There were campus-wide manhunts with hundreds of volunteers. His body finally turned up in an electrical closet 6 weeks later. Accidental electrocution. A lot of people are commenting about missing people connected with them, regardless of who last saw them. So in case this is interesting, a distant cousin of mine went out drinking years ago with a group of friends, but each friend drove their own car between various bars to drink. Don't do this, kids. She never made it to the final bar, and people suspected for years that she'd been abducted and or murdered. Fairly recently they unexpectedly found her. She had driven her car off the road and into a bay, where it had sunk and presumably drowned her. Don't drink and drive. My aunt is missing in the Florida Keys. I don't know who else to turn to. It's a case of no body, no crime. She went scuba diving with her husband. He resurfaced and she did not. We have a lot of questions, like why her husband refused to turn over the boat GPS. Unfortunately, they are closing the case. No. It isn't a case of he resurfaced and she didn't. They left shore together and he returned alone. That is the only thing he can claim without evidence otherwise. I wasn't the last one but one of the last few. He was a close friend of mine. Practically family. It last the last period of the school day. We sat next to each other and would always goof off. I still remember it clear as day. He asked me if he could come over and hang out. That whole hour he talked about how he didn't want to go home, that his parents were being total asses or something like that. I remember thinking nothing of it really, and then I made a decision that I still regret to this day. I told him I had a bunch of stuff to do after school, which was a lie. I remember the bell ringing and I do not remember if he said something like "I will see you later" or something like that. I got a text from his brother late that night asking if I had seen him. I told him no. He asked if he could come over, but that was the last I saw him. I tried to call my friend but no answer, and then I texted him asking if he was okay, to which I never got a response. The school was on edge for those next few days. His family wasn't responding to anyone and I grew extremely worried. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 days, but they finally found him. Self-inflicted gunshot wound. I still wonder what would have happened if I didn't lie. Just told him yes. Let's hang out, man. We were told at a school assembly. It's still vivid. I knew something was wrong when they called the whole school in. I sat down and my legs starting twitching because something felt off, you know. The principal told us and I remember blurting out, "Oh God, oh God," and I just sat there and cried. I was the last one to leave the assembly room. I still think about it occasionally when I hang out with his brothers or hear a certain song on the radio. It has gotten easier with time but still hurts. I know the saying, it's never the ones you expect, and that's so true. He never showed signs of depression or anything. He was literally the coolest kid of the school and a genuine friend. Be kind to others because you never know what they're going through. You can't blame yourself, man. No person who kills themselves did it because someone refused to hang with them. You can feel all the remorse that you can handle, but never blame yourself for your loss here. I know you're not necessarily blaming yourself. Sometimes a reminder just helps. I was the last person to see a patient of mine before his brother locked him in his basements for a few weeks. The patient was eventually found. I felt really privileged to have helped. By chance, he gave me his brother's address as a forwarding address and the police went looking for him there. When found, my guy was dehydrated and had a broken jaw, but ultimately did well. His brother is currently on a secure psychiatric ward. I was in the Coast Guard. As we were approaching a call, I saw the 16-year-old go under. We locked eyes and she slipped away. She was not found for 3 weeks. I saw worse situations, but that really stuck with me. When they found her, her mom invited the boat crew to the funeral cause we did what we could. I was crushed. Thanks for your service. I know the Coasties station near my house do a lot of recoveries in addition to rescues, and it's got to be heartbreaking work. Peace. I was 8 years old when I went with my parents to drop off my little sister for visitation with her biological father. The next morning, my dad woke me up for school and said she didn't come back that night. My dad went to Denver. We knew the bio dad had family in this area for the weekend to go try to look for them and contacted the Denver PD. My local PD didn't assist in finding her at all. In fact, that I told my parents that you can't abduct your own child, despite the fact that my parents had full custody. I will never forget the day that we got the call that she was found. I was with my mom and 2 of my other sister at the grand opening of the Cabela's in my hometown when my mom answered her phone and burst into tears. She was in a small town in Michigan, had been homeschooled by the wife of her bio dad, and was going by her middle name. An officer responded to her missing person report. Ironic, because the oldest son of the wife had run away. Some way, somehow, the officer knew something was wrong and looked into the situation. The whole situation was much more difficult on more sister than me. She was basically 2 years behind in school when she came back, and the principal of our elementary school wanted to put her in 1st grade rather than 3rd, which is what she should have been in at the time. But they ultimately kept her in 3rd grade with our sister. The two are 10 days apart in age and have been best friends their whole life. She got tutoring and managed to get back on track. She is currently in her senior year and looking forward to college in the fall. By the time I got to this post, I had forgotten that this topic wasn't specifically about people who were murdered or died in some way. Suffice to say that ending was a really pleasant surprise. I am positive me and my little brother were the last ones to see my father alive. We were waiting for the school bus and saw him driving back home with a strange look on his face. We waved to him, but he didn't wave back. After that he went missing. A couple of weeks later, he was found dead hanging from a tree. It was a suicide. It is a scene in my head that gets replayed in my head often and it hurts me to imagine whatever might have been going through his head. I miss him so much. Dang. That's rough. I'm so sorry, man. Saw him at a club with some friends on a night out. One of my friends was hooking up with him on and off, so they had usual uni drama going on. He left after that to go back home or something. The next morning he was found dead. The last ever video was him getting off a bus and then there was no other CCTV footage of him after he walked a bit further down the road. They investigated our uni for months and months but no leads were ever found. His death was never solved. It's really unsettling to this day. They were found. Committed suicide in a motel room. I was ignorant and did not realize he was reaching out for help. That realization after the fact hit me hard. I saved his last email to me and read it as a reminder every so often. I was at a movie theater with my brother when a guy my brother knew saw us. We all talked for a little while, then told him we were leaving. He asked us for a ride to his apartment, so we gave him one. He asked us if we wanted to come and hang out for a while but we didn't want to, so we left. A few weeks later we found out after we dropped him off he got into an argument with his neighbor and they killed him. I wonder sometimes would he still be alive if we stayed or would we have been killed too? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.